Hey everybody, this is Andrew Brown and welcome to the AWS Cloud Project Bootcamp. In this video, we are going to learn a bit more about the applications. We learned about Docker, but let's put that into action by doing some development. And so what I want to do is create a new endpoint, and I also want to create something new in the front end. Now, you don't have to be really good at Flask or React. You just have to be able to copy paste along and get to the end. Because the point of this bootcamp is not to really teach you how to be a web application developer. It's about learning how to use the cloud services, but we do have to be able to copy and paste and figure this stuff out. So I'm going to walk you through that stuff. I have not planned anything. I'm just going to pull something up. We're going to work through it, and I'm going to assign it as homework. So launch up your environment. I'm working off that week one, again, repo. What I'm going to do is just fork this so that, or not fork it, but branch it so we can make it very clear what it is that we were doing. You do not do this. You do not branch. Everything needs to be in your main repo so I can see what you're doing. This is the wrong repository. We're going to go over here. So we're going to go over to, you're going to do this in your regular one, but this is week one again that we did. If you remember, I renamed week one to week 0 from the last one. So now everything is corrected. And I'm going to make a branch of this. So I'll go to my branches, create a new branch. We have week 1 here. So I'll say week 1 React Flask coding. And we'll create this new branch. Okay, and I'll go back to my code and I'll drop this down and we'll go to this here and I'll launch Git pod. I'll close my old one here and we'll give the environment a moment to get to it. So it won't take too long. All right, so it more or less should be ready. On the left-hand side, I'm not seeing my Docker. So maybe this is the issue that some people were saying, that sometimes it didn't load. I guess we will find out as we go here. You'll also notice that there's OpenAPI. I actually didn't mention this, but in the backend Flask application, I have an OpenAPI file. And that's so that we can see what the API is. So if I go open this, whoops, I'm surprised it's not loading it here. Maybe it's because it's in a subdirectory. I'm going to go to this tab again. Is there a way to load this OpenAPI? It looks like it wants it at the root of the repo. So as an example, I just want to show you that there is an API. So if I go into Backend Flask, I'm going to do CP to copy, autocomplete, and I'm going to go ... back to go one directory here. And so now if I go back a directory, it's here. And if I go over to API, I should be able to load it. But it's not loading correctly. So this plugin's not working correctly, but I just want to show you this OpenAPI here. This is the specification for the actual backend here. I really do want to open that. Huh. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here and type in OpenAPI. And I think that's the one we have installed. I'm going to uninstall it, reload it. Okay. I'm going to go back to the extension, OpenAPI, install it. And now if I go to it, new OpenAPI file, why won't it just find an existing one? I don't want to create a new one, I want it to open this one. API. OpenAPI makes it easy for you to navigate. Create a new file. I just want to open an OpenAPI file. So it says click the OpenAPI button to switch to an OpenAPI Explorer. Okay. Give me 2 seconds. Okay, so if we hit this here, and we go back here, this is the new one here. If we go to info, I could have swore I just saw it. Okay, so the way it works, I guess I just didn't understand, is if you have the file open, then it will show it. So I'm thinking that if I go over here, maybe I can delete this one because this is just a copy. If we go over to our Flask file here, and then I go to API. It's showing the API. So this is the API file, and we have it. So why did I create this OpenAPI file? Well, OpenAPI is a standard for defining open APIs, or APIs in general. We go here. So it's a specification. It used to be called Swagger. And the reason why we want to use it is because if we want to use, let's say, API Gateway, we can import this and it'll automatically create it. There's a lot of services that can be used to do that, or if we want to test our API. So there's a lot of reasons to document it. The really cool thing is that we can open this up and see its documentation. So there was a way to do this before. Here we go, clicking that button. And so it helps us see all the endpoints, right? Okay. And the example code and stuff like that. So really useful to have that. And then it makes it very clear what it is that we're using here. You can also upload it to something like changelog or readlog, readme.website. Here. Developer hub that meets your developers anyway. No, I think it's readme.so. Easiest way to create a readme file. Nope. Oh yeah, transform your API docs into interactive hubs. So this is a service, and it has a free tier because I have it. But I'm going to just log in here and show you what it looks like. Okay. You don't have to do this. I'm just showing it to you. And so because I have that OpenAPI, I was able to just import it. So I imported the API, and then I was able to get a bunch of rich data. And then it created this documentation page. So if I was to open the documentation page, I'm not sure, how do we get it from here? Maybe it's this button here. So then I could have an API reference, and then people that want to use my API, they'll have examples in all the code and how to use it. So anyway, OpenAPI is a good standard for documenting your API. So we'll try to do our best whenever we change it to modify this file. So we will close that, because what I really want to do is show you how to write some code on the back end and the front end. So what we're going to do is start up our application. I'm going to just type clear here. And we saw the last time we can do Docker Compose up to launch both our front end and a back end. I know some folks are having trouble with the syncing. It probably has to do with the volumes. I'm not sure how to solve that. Worst case, you'll have to keep on doing Docker up. So we'll give this a moment to start up. We'll see you back here in a second. All right, so after waiting a minute or so, because it's the first time it pulls the images, we can see port 4567, 3000. We're going to go to our ports. I'm going to make this larger because I know it's super small. We want to make sure these are both unlocked. In our gitpod YAML file, we can specify to keep these unlocked every time. I'm just going to manually do it every time just because. We're going to open up port 3000. It says not found. So 3000, see how it's not actually running. That's how I can tell, because it's empty. The reason why this happened is because we didn't do the npm install, which is a requirement before we start that one up. I'm going to go check the logs under the Docker tab to see that is the issue. So we go here, it's red, you can see it's not running. We go to view logs, we wait a moment. It says React scripts not found. You know why? Because npm install wasn't installed, so there's no way it could work. So what we'll do is go to the tab here for Docker. Oh, we're already on it, sorry. We'll go back to our Explorer. We're going to right click and say compose down. And that will shut down the two containers. While that is going, I will go to a new tab. I'm going to cd into, clear. I'm just going to bring this over here a bit so it's a bit easier to look, but we'll cd into our React directory, which we called frontend React. I'm going to do npm install. I'm going to check if Docker is done. Terminal will be reused for tasks. Press any key to close it. So we hit that, that's closed. We're waiting for npm install to finish. Once that is done, I think it's almost done, we will go and we'll do compose up. So this will start up the environments again. We'll go back over to our ports. Notice that these are empty. They will fill in when they have launched. We can go back here to watch it. I'll see you back here in a couple seconds. Literally was a couple seconds. I didn't even have to go anywhere. These are both running. Make sure these locks are open. If they're not open, you'll run into issues. We'll open up port 3000, and now we see the application. We can see code. So how does this app work? Well, right now we have a join now sign in. Things are mocked. So the API delivers mock data. It's not hitting a database. This front end is commuting to the back end. There is no real authentication. We're using cookies right now to mock creating authentication. I'm going to go here and join now. So I'm going to type in Andrew Brown. You type in what is for you. Username will be Andrew Brown. Password I'm doing is testing1234. I'll hit enter, sign up. And so this confirmation page, I'm going to do andrew@exampro.co. It actually knows, it'll remember what the other one was. And here it's going to be 1234, I believe. That 1234 is hard coded. Okay, and so now I'm in the application as authenticated, but there's not doing any complex checks here. So I don't know why my monitor is so dark. I can barely see some of the lines here. It's just I guess the way my computer is set for the brightness, but hopefully you can see it very clearly. But anyway, so we have our main feed here. We have some stuff on the left-hand side. I did not implement everything purposely so that we'd have something to do. So the profile page is implemented. Messages is for the most part implemented. This could be a bit nicer. Notifications has not been done. So that is a great opportunity. I know this is hard to read, but it says 404 not found because we did not make that page. So I'm going to go back to my home. Okay, we're going to go back to our code. And the first thing is that we want to, not the first thing, but I would say that we want to add an endpoint to our application. So let's go first, before we do that, plan it out. And the way we're going to plan it out is open up our OpenAPI. We're going to go to our API tab now that we know that's how we're supposed to do it. And we're going to just go through here and take a look. I just want to bump this down a bit. I'm going to set this to, oops. This is a little bit too big for me to work with, so I'm going to go to settings here, and we'll bring this font size down to 20. So it's a bit more manageable. And I just need to reset this to 100. There we go. Okay. So I want some documentation to understand how this works. So I'm going to go to the OpenAPI. I just want to show you how I knew what to write for this. And we'll go to the specification. On the left-hand side, it tells us all about the different kinds of objects. So I basically crawled through it and looked for the other examples. So we can see we have responses. If I go here, there's a response object. It shows me examples of how these work. You can pretty much learn it by just going through them and finding examples online. So we have enough to work here. We want to add an endpoint for the notifications tab. So I have home, search. We can see them here on the left-hand side. I don't know if this tool helps in any way. We probably can add a new path here. So we can try using this tool to make it a bit easier. So API activities is the home page. Actually, this is the home page. It's hard to see because some of these are puts and guests. So this is a post request. So this is for home. I'm going to make one for notifications. So we'll add one here at the top. So we'll say add. And it just goes down below. So it sets up some stuff for us, but it's not that useful. So we'll say APIs, activities, notifications. Now, when you make APIs, it's usually good to scope them with /API. Our app is going to be served on API. So it'll be like api.crutter.com/API, which is a bit redundant. So if you were building out an application, you could either mask or route the domain to the /API or just not include it at all. When you're building out APIs, sometimes they'll version them. They'll say API 1, API version 2. Not very often do you go to version 2 or version 3. So you could probably just stick with this to keep it simple. But we're going to name it notifications. I'm going to open this up in split tab here in the top right corner. And we're going to look at another example that is similar. Because this is what I mean, where if you have existing code, you can pretty much kind of figure it out. So this is a post, that's no good. We're going to look for activities home, which is very similar. This is a post request, that's no good. Home. Okay, so we have a get, that means it's a get request. We need a description. So this says returns a feed of activity based on all users. This is going to be return a feed of activity for all my followers, for all the people, for all of those that I follow. I'm going to put a tag on this. I'm going to call it activities. Tags allows you to group I'll show you here in a second. There we go. If we go up to here on this one here with the little key, tags allow you to group things like this. So I can group these endpoints under activities and messages. I could probably put them under 2 if I really wanted to. But that's how this one ended up over here. You can see there's not much filled in here. We want to tell what kind of stuff we need to pass along. So we go down here, looking at this one. We have responses to 100, so that's clear. An OK is good, but we can say returns an array of activities because that's what it does. I just noticed this one has an exclamation on the end. When you're using YAML, you can not have the quotations. You can have the quotations around it like this. I'm just going to leave them out. Notice I have singles here, not being super consistent. We want the application to return application JSON. That is extremely common for applications to just communicate in JSON, so we want to be explicit. And then here down below, we're going to specify a schema. Schema is just a way of refactoring this, so we're not writing a lot of code. So this is actually just saying reference down below here, this activity. Go down below here, we have a section called components. And so it's saying, I expect to get back from this endpoint an object. And it says items, so it's expecting a collection of these, so an array of objects that have a UUID, a display name, a handle, a message, a reply count, a repost count, a likes count created at, expires at. Okay, so if we go back to our preview and we go into notifications here, you can see that this is what it's returning back. That's the schema that we're looking at. We don't really need any parameters for this. This would be things that we'd expect to get back from the API because we just want to, we already know who the user is. We don't have to pass that along here per se. So that's the endpoint. So I'm going to go here and commit that and say update the OpenAPI, update OpenAPI to add notifications. Said a specification, that would have been good too. We'll go back over here. Now, if you're working on a project, you probably should open tickets and then tag those tickets, but I'm just not going to do that this time around. So now we have it, and now we know what we expect to get back. I'm going to go over to my backend application. We're going to define a new endpoint. The entry point into this application is app.py. How do we know that? I mean, I think we go to our compose file here. Remember that we made that Docker file under the React Flask location under Docker file. If we go down below here, we can see that it says -m Flask, so module. That's what James told us, that's how we run the module. I'm going to assume that it's expecting to find that app.py file. In other frameworks like Sinatra and things like that, you usually have to call out to how it knows what to call there. But in this case, I believe that it's implying that it knows that app.yaml is the application based on a convention. So going in here, we have the application, and you can see that we are importing all these services. We are taking a serverless. It's like we're setting it up this way for a very specific reason. I'm trying to remember the name for this. It was a concept in Rails, so Rails service objects. Is that what they're called? Yeah, service objects. And this is a concept that is not new, but it's an idea of breaking up your code into concrete services. And the advantage of organizing your code this way for an application is that when you want to break these off into microservices, they're already containing everything they need to do that. So that's why I did that, because even though we're building this kind of like a monolith, we are setting it up with the mindset that we want it to be microservices that we can break it up down the road. So that's the reason why we're doing that, because if all of these are isolate services, we could literally replace this part of the code with API Gateway and just go to all these Pythons as containers, or even put them in Lambdas, which is kind of cool. So I want us to do that so that we get in that mindset of microservices and we start to break away from the ORM model that we've seen in Ruby on Rails apps and Laravel apps and things like that that cause us not to adopt cloud in a great way or microservices. So here we load the application. We have this, which is a way of getting environment variables into the application, our front and back end. This is for setting up origins. This is for setting up cores. Cores is a big pain in the butt. We will talk about this more when our cores week. Down below, this is how you define routes for a Flask app. So you can see we have a bunch here. And then for things that are doing posts, we have to have cross origin. We are doing a GET request. We do not need this one for that one. We were looking at API home activities home as an example. We're going to copy this one, bring it to the top, or we just put it below here and put it there. You'll notice some of these return a model and they do error validation. That's because if we're bringing in parameters, we had to have some kind of error checking. We aren't using any external library. We're writing them by hand, keeping the app small in scope and easy to manage. So here we've copied this one. I'm going to call this one notifications. And we're going to say notifications activities. And I'm going to copy this name here. Well, not copy it. I'll create a new file here and we'll say notifications activities. You might be asking, why am I not camel casing this? Every language has different rules on how you should name things. I believe that Python follows what Ruby follows, which is duck typing and an underscore lowercase. So that's why we're doing it that way. I'm going to copy this one. I'll do it at the top here. I'm trying to keep them kind of logically together. And we'll say notifications. So that now we have that file over there. We're going to go into that empty file, which is notifications activities. I'm going to split again. We're going to open up home activities so we have an example to do it. I'm going to bring in the first 3 lines. I'm going to paste them over here. I'm going to bring this over so I can see what I'm doing. It did not paste them in, so I will try this again. I'll select them again here. Copy, paste. Okay. So this line here is importing date times, time deltas, time zones. It's because we need to mock out that data. That's why I brought in that stuff. We're going to set the time as now. Again, this is for mocking the data. I want to match the name for notifications activities up here so this works properly. Notice we have a single run command. That's pretty standard for service objects, is always to have one entry point. And so we have some results here. Since this stuff is going to look really similar, I'm just going to copy this and paste it. This structure should be the same because when we were doing our schema, when we were updating our specification for our API, we noticed that we shared the same activity object. I'm going to open that up to show you what I mean. So over here, we have this schema activity. And notice it's the same for home, it's the same for notification, wherever we put our notification. Somewhere in here, right? Here, it's the same object. And so if it has the same structure, this is going to have the same structure. That's why it's okay for us to copy paste this. I'm going to close the old one here. I want to see notifications. I'm going to change this a bit. Let's just pretend it's from someone else. What's a good name for a person here? Twinkle Starlight. That's all I can think of. My daughter has like a little plushie called Twinkle Starlight. It has nothing to do with My Little Ponies. It's just the fact that there's these little cats and that's what they are. So that's what I put. Or I could put Coco. Let's put Coco. I am a white unicorn because that is what Coco is. It's one of my daughter's stuffies. Okay, so here we have created at, expires at. So this is saying from now, do this 2 days in the future, 5 days in the future, or sorry, 2 days in the past, 5 days in the future. This is just a way for us to mock some data. We have a UUID. All this stuff is just mocked. Here we can see whether someone has replies. We will leave that in place. I'm going to go down here and delete these 2 examples. And so that should be enough for this data. Now, when you make major changes like add new endpoints, often you have to restart the apps. with web applications. Well, it depends. But for Flask or Sinatra app, because they are very lightweight web applications, you would. For larger ones like Django or Rails or Laravel, you would not have to. But let's just see what we have to do by testing. So I'm going to go here and open up the 4567 one. Okay, and we can see that we have an error. It says data home for mapping. I'm reading it to see what the error is. Data home. So we'll go back here. It's probably because this is named the same as the other one. So we'll go here and just name it uniquely like that. We'll go back, refresh. That is normal. We want a 404 when we go to nothing. So this endpoint is going to be /API notifications. It's a GET request, so we don't have to do anything special here. Whoops. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to paste this in here. Hit enter. And our endpoint came back. So our front end, our back end endpoint is implemented. I'm going to go commit this. You can see the changes I made and do it yourself and make sure it works. Create new notifications backend endpoint. I'm going to commit that. Now let's work on the front end. Here we have our application. We want to implement this notifications tab. I'm going to go and open the front end. In the front end, there's a lot of code going on here. This is a React application generated by React start scripts or something. It's a very common way of generating on a React. I don't specialize in React, but I know my way around it. With all frameworks, front-end frameworks, you just generally figure out a pattern of working with it, and it works. So if we go to here on the left-hand side, I'm looking for its entry point. So app.js, there's app.js and index.js. If we go to package.json, we can see how this starts up. It does React scripts. Yeah, that's what we're using, React script starts. And I believe its entry point is index. On the left-hand side here, where are you, index? I'm looking for you. We're in the backend code, that's why I'm confused. And so we can see that it's loading React, the DOM client, and then it mounts the app here in the here on the root, right on the main tag. So I have a main tag in our application, and it's going to load the app. So that's how it starts up. And then we're into this part. So here down below, we are using something called React Router. That's how we're handling all the routes. And so you can see I'm creating all the routes here, and then these are being mapped to their pages. So we need a new page here called notifications feed. Why didn't you call it notifications activity? I don't know. That's just what it is. I'm not 100% consistent everywhere, but I try to do my best. It's grayed out because this file doesn't exist yet, which is a good indicator. Saying here we haven't used process, we could probably take that out. I'm going to go down here. I'm going to type in notifications. I'm going to go to the top. We're going to copy this. We're going to paste this and save it. We need to create this file because it does not exist. It's not grayed out anymore. Oh, it's because we're using the code. It doesn't necessarily indicate that the file's been created. These are under pages. I'm going to go to pages and make it here. Notice that we're doing title case. This is just the way people work with React apps. I don't personally like naming my files this way. It's just how they name them. I'm going to copy that and make a new file for the CSS if we need any, which will be similar. We are going to open up the homepage feed because it's very similar. I'm going to probably copy all of its contents. There we go. I'm going to paste it over into the notifications feed. I'm going to go to the top. This is the wrong file. I pasted it into the CSS file. I can tell because it's storing a lot of errors. So we'll cut that out there. I'll go over here. We'll paste that in. I'm going to go to the top. I'm going to name this notifications feed page. Okay. Here we're importing a lot of components, the desktop navigation, the sidebar, activity feed form, reply form. This page works pretty much the same way as the home page. The difference is that the data is going to be different. So if we go down here, we can change this to notifications. I'm just scrolling down here. So this all looks good to me. I wonder if we have any custom CSS here. We have a little bit here, but it's on the article. It's not even scoped in the homepage feed. That's not great on my part. So this might just work and we might be done, except we need to hook up that link on the left-hand side to the notifications page, but I think it will already work. So in this application, this left-hand sidebar, I think I called it desktop notification. We go here on the left-hand side, desktop navigation, sorry. And in here, it already goes to notifications, so it's already hooked up. We just need to copy and paste some of that code. I'm going to refresh this, not that it's that necessary. We'll go to this tab, and we are seeing the stuff. So we just did the front end. It was that easy. So you might be asking, Andrew, I don't understand. There's a lot of stuff going on in this app. I gotcha. We will try to keep doing follow-up videos to explain more of the application, but I just want to make sure that you're able to achieve this because this is the bare minimum right now at the stage that we need to know for the next week upcoming that we want to know. So implement front end notifications page. There we go. The only thing is that it would be nice to change that to notifications. So I'm going to do that before we go. I'm going to just adjust that. I didn't rename this to notifications feed, so we'll do that. Notice it didn't break anything. It still worked, but we'll fix that. And somewhere it says home in here, so I can just search for that. This says home. We have to change this to notifications, so it highlights the right page. We'll change this to notifications. We'll go back over here, refresh. It's highlighting the right thing. It says notifications at the top. Minor fixes to notifications page. And there you go. So this is, again, under the React Flask coding example. Please go ahead and do this on your own. And I will see you in class soon.